if I talk about this, I immediately will never get another job again.
Hello. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast, presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, digital marketing dude at Hippo Direct, and you can reach me at max@hippodirect.com for help using your podcast as a marketing tool. This is episode number 1992, fantastic year if I must say so myself, and today's guest is Maggie Fox. She is the founder of the world's first social media consultancy back in 2006 called Social Media Group. She also served as SVP Digital at SAP, knows more about digital transformation than pretty much everybody, and is an advisor to high-growth CEOs. Let's get magnificent with Maggie. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with a social media pioneer and the queen of digital transformation, Maggie Fox. Maggie, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Max. Wow, that's I'm really going to have to live up to that intro now. Thanks.
No pressure. I know you've been preparing for this moment for all your life.
Pretty much. This is it. This is the pinnacle. It's all downhill from here.
All right, now there's a tear flowing from my right eye like you'd never imagine. But you've done so many cool things in your career that we're going to get to. But we're going to start off on a somewhat social media related note. So you started the world's first social media consultancy back in 2006, around the time that social media wasn't even very widely used. So why did you do that?
So it's really interesting. So I had actually been playing around with social media platforms in sort of the 2 to 3 years before I founded Social Media Group, and just personally, right? So the tools became really easy to use. Things like Blogger, it was really blogging that was very popular. YouTube was kind of a thing. And I've been playing with these tools personally. And I was doing a lot of consulting work for a big retailer. And I was literally in a meeting where they had sort of this very senior, very brilliant advertising creative mind. And he said, I'm really interested in how companies are using blogs, which was what he would have said at the time, to talk to their customers. And it was literally for me, and this was early 2006, it was literally a light bulb moment. I sat there and thought, ooh, I know that world very well, and I also know communications, marketing, etc. very well. I think there's an opportunity here. And initially the positioning was, interestingly enough, was actually, I thought that it would be like kind of this connected piece between, because there were technology companies that were building platforms, like McDonald's was a really early user of some of these kind of proprietary corporate enterprise geared blogging platforms. And I thought, you know what, there's an opportunity to get in between the technology providers and the companies and provide consulting and help them understand how to use the software. And that, of course, it ended up being much, much bigger opportunity than that. But that was the initial thesis. And went from that idea, bing, in January 2006 to our first client in August 2006. And then the year after, in 2007, we got Ford Motor Company. We got their global business for social media.
Holy cow. That's not a bad early client to get.
Oh, yeah. It was dog that caught the ice cream truck. It was really, it was very big for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. What was your pitch to clients in those early days? Because I imagine, I mean, it's still these days you're seeing so much change, transformation world, and people adopting social media, digital more and more. But back then it had to be like this mysterious, weird alien thing, like how did you sell people and actually hiring you guys as come in as social media consultants?
Yeah, there was kind of a very familiar pattern that would emerge. So somebody like Ford, we didn't have to do any convincing because Alan Mulally, who was the new CEO, had come in and said, look, we need to increase our digital capabilities. And he sort of put his hands up and told his direct reports to do that. And so they had a lot of motivation because the CEO, he was a visionary CEO. He saw the future. He knew they needed to do that. So that was not a sell job for us in terms of the power and importance of social media. But what we would see with smaller, less visionary companies, perhaps, or companies that were just maybe a little more conservative or in conservative spaces, is that you get the one person who would have the bing idea, and they would really get religion, right? Like they would really, really understand that this was going to change the world. And, sometimes they were mid-level, sometimes they were a little more senior director, maybe vice president, and they would be the passionate advocate. And so they would typically, the pattern was very familiar. Like they would reach out, right? Either I'd see them at a conference or they would reach out directly and say, look, I'm really passionate about this. I really want to push this forward in my company. Can you help me make a case? So most of the time, the first interaction with the senior leadership team at a client would literally be going in and convincing everybody that in fact, social media was a thing that was not going to go away. And so we would have this pitch deck where we talk about case studies. Some of them were ours, some of them were other large corporate case studies to sort of show that other people were doing it. And then we actually spent a lot of time. I used to, like the Pew Internet Research was something I turned to on an almost weekly basis. Every time they had a new reportage and new research around, this number of people are now using blogs, this number of people are using other platforms. So we would incorporate that all the time, and we'd say, look how much it's grown over the last 6 months, look how much it's grown over the last year. So there was an awful lot of just data, right? You're just going in and going, look, guys,
right.
and often, guys, this isn't going to go anywhere. And it was we were pretty good at explaining that simply, because there was also a lot of education we had to do as well. People didn't understand what it was. Why would you do that? And so we really got really tight at saying, like, look, here's what it is. Here's why it matters. Here's why you should do something about it. And so a lot of education, a lot of data to sort of make the business case for it, that they really needed to pay attention. And if they didn't, their competition certainly would be.
Well, you need those supporting elements. So it makes sense that you were so ingrained in the data. And so I could see how that helps with your pitch. What is the biggest change you've seen over the past, I guess, decade and a half at the time of this recording?
Oh, God.
In terms of how people view social media?
Well, I remember Charlene Lee had a great way of describing it. And do you know who Charlene is? Everyone should, if you don't. And she was a really early pioneer, again, also in social media.
I'm going to say yes, because everyone should, but I will never reveal whether I know or not.
Well, if anyone listening to this does not know Charlene Lee, please Google her, because she's a brilliant mind who's been doing a lot of important thinking and research on this topic for longer even than I have. And so Charlene, one of her early sort of concepts was that eventually social media would be like air. It would just be something that was a part of our everyday lives. And that absolutely has come to pass. In the early days, it was like something the young people are doing over there. And then before you knew it, your mom was on Facebook. And then you were following a newspaper on Twitter. Yeah, that was a good time, wasn't it? When she started commenting on your pictures. Hey, what are you doing? Yeah, my mother started stalking me very early on, because she would say things to me. I'd be like, oh, I did, go for dinner or whatever. And she'd be like, so I saw that you, were talking to somebody. I was like, what are you doing? And she didn't have a Twitter account, but she would actually just go and look at mine. So anyway.
Right. Brush your teeth, etc.
Pretty much. Yeah. See, you were up late last night.
It is a crazy world. It's a crazy changing world. And one of the changes you've made is something was the bridge that got you from this social media group consultancy to being a senior vice president in the digital world at SAP, which is one of the biggest companies in SaaS products. I guess, I don't know if it's considered a SaaS product, but providers in the world.
Yeah, some of the portfolio is, more so than ever.
So you went from this consultant mindset or world to this giant corporation. So first of all, what made you make that change?
So SAP had been a client for quite a while. They got the importance of social media very early on. There were a lot of really passionate advocates inside the company. We started working with them in 2007 as well. Wow. So I had a long history with them and quite a network, because I'd had the opportunity to work with some of the wonderful people in communications and marketing and the community and other parts of the business. So SAP was very much a known quantity. And I had actually, one of my clients was a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Becker, who actually now is the president of the San Jose Sharks.
Oh, wow.
And Jonathan was, yeah, I know, really. Talk about a transition. There's another one. So
Yeah.
Jonathan was a chief marketing officer at SAP and had been for a few years. And he would periodically, we would keep in touch, and he would periodically sort of say, hey, why don't you come and work for me? And I would say, well, Jonathan, I'm kind of busy running this startup. And what happened was we actually decided to exit the business, and I was going through that process, which, being a solopreneur is difficult. So it was definitely time to make a transition after 10 years, almost 10 years. And Jonathan approached me again and said, look, I have a challenge in my digital part of marketing. It needs someone to come in and really have a good look at it and rearrange things a little. And I had already done some consulting to help him re-architect his overall marketing department. So he wanted me to come in and do the same thing very specifically with digital. And honestly, it's a great company, which I still have a lot of passion and affection for. And he asked me to come in and do that work. And I thought, you know what? That looks pretty interesting. Like, that looks like a lot of fun, which I have to say is typically any of the pivots I have made in my career over the last 25 years typically have always been, hey, that looks like fun. Like, that seems to be my criteria. So apparently if someone comes to me and says, hey, you want to join the circus? I'll be like, that looks like fun.
That's good criteria, though. I mean,
Right?
when you really get down to the details of it, that is what should be a big driver for you, because you have to have fun with whatever you're doing.
You totally do. And what else matters? I mean, of course, we all need to pay our bills, but beyond that, you got to do
two
something.
sides of the
You got to
spectrum.
love it. Exactly. So anyhow, long story short, Jonathan came and said, look, would you come and work for me? And I said, you know what, Jonathan, absolutely. Because he is one of those people who, if he called me tomorrow, I would go work for him again. I have a ton of respect for him. He's one of my favorite people. So so Jonathan asked me to come to SAP. And so I did. And after I was there for about 3 weeks, the board of directors turned to me and they were like, oh, by the way, we have these 5 major transformation initiatives. And one of them is the customer digital experience. So Maggie Fox, you are the senior vice president of digital. We would like you to take this company-wide initiative on. So that was a little bit unexpected, but ended up being incredibly rewarding. Yeah.
A little bit different than the circus.
Yes.
or maybe not.
I think there are circus elements to all organizations, but yeah, it was that was a lot of fun to do that work. But that's
well, it's amazing, and I know you had so many people on the teams that you were leading. Well, first of all, your contact should have told you that he was obsessed with sharks and obsessed with hockey, and give you a little foresight to that. But anyway, what's the biggest thing you learned while having that role at SAP?
I learned that when people, I sort of instinctively knew this because I'm a stubborn person. Like, if you tell me you can't do something, then like you're basically guaranteeing I'm going to do it. So it's
you can't join the circus.
Come on.
All right, I couldn't resist.
One of the things I learned is that, so I think we all have this perception that getting things done inside a really big company is totally impossible. Like people try and these big projects and they just sink under the weight of their own PowerPoint, and people run in circles, do busy work, and then basically the projects go away when everyone forgets about them. Like, that's kind of the picture I think a lot of people have in their minds of that sort of overwhelming and oppressive bureaucracy, and what it does to innovation and what it does to change. And it's not true. The biggest takeaway I had at SAP, was you can actually get anything done if you have a couple of things in place and if you have a couple of skills. And one of them is assuming the best intentions, right? Is sort of looking at the world around you, looking at the people who probably aren't necessarily reporting to you or on your team, your colleagues, and their teams, and realizing that we all want to do what's right. We all want company success, and we all want success for ourselves and our teams. And when you walk into a situation where you have to ask someone to do something differently, and you assume that good intention, your likelihood of success is quadrupled, whatever, it's exponential, let's just say. Whereas if you walk into a situation like that and assume you're going to get blocked, assume people are going to try to fight you, that's probably what's going to happen, because you're being adversarial. So I think that was one of the biggest things. It's sort of this jujitsu kind of psychological skill that's required to drive big change inside a big company, that if you do it right, you totally can. Like, you can change anything. And we saw that at SAP with the dramatic transformation that the team I was working with was able to execute. So like, this idea that you can't get stuff done at a big company is nonsense. You totally can, but you have to be patient and be very careful.
Let's get to digital transformation as a whole. So you've led this at SAP as well as a bunch of companies, and you help advise companies as a wide range of different companies and executives. So to start off there, what is your definition of digital transformation?
That is such an evil question.
Because
you know it's a buzzword. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. How would you define business?
Yeah, art. Give me the definition of art.
Yes, exactly. Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like, what is social media, right? And to me, in my experience, digital transformation is just bringing a new set of tools into an existing process. And those tools may be software, or they may be a skill set. And it's this notion of really thinking, and people use this phrase too much, but digital first. So I'll give you an example. At SAP, and this is like it's a sort of a piece inside a bigger whole of transformation. So at SAP, one of the things we did was re-platform the .com and all of the other that we did SAP.com first, one platform, and then we put all the other websites on the same instance. I remember being in a meeting, and there was clearly debate within the team that they were bringing to the table to have a conversation about, which was, should we have a mobile first website? Or should we just, sort of be thinking about the web? And I literally was like, guys, and I say guys a lot, but of course I mean it to be inclusive. People, if we aren't mobile first, and this was maybe 2014, 2015, if we aren't mobile first, like if we aren't thinking mobile first on everything, we should all be fired. Like, wake up. Of course it's got to be mobile first. Think about the user. And to me, that's digital transformation. Right? It's a mindset shift to recognition of the tools and technologies people expect to be able to use in their day-to-day. And that's this particular situation. I mean, if you're talking about the digital transformation of, something, a manufacturing plant, of course, then that also is completely different. But in a customer sort of sales, software technology space, making the content, making the experience accessible through any digital channel, for us, was digital transformation.
I love that mobile first example. I think that's a really good way to put it in a nutshell, and a way to think about it. It's really like a metaphor within a metaphor of digital transformation. What hurdles do you see in the digital transformation world that may inhibit companies from actually embracing this?
Yeah. Legacy technology, honestly. It's like, when you get to a certain scale, sometimes it's really hard to rip and replace, but you need to, right? So if you think about all the interconnected, interlaced systems, whether they're sort of presentation layer website stuff, or all the way through to CRM, you could have 15 pieces of technology interconnected, running, a 14 or $15 billion a year in sales. Where do you start fixing that? If it's legacy, it's 15 years old, it really isn't up to date. Like, where do you start pulling on that thread? I think that is the overwhelming sort of like, where do we start? The other part of that problem is, I think pretty much at enterprise level, without exception, those 15 different platforms are not all owned by one person or one team. So then you have to start to do the stakeholder requirements gathering across a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise. That's pretty complicated, and it's pretty hard, and it's pretty lengthy, and your CEO probably wanted it done yesterday. So I think and we certainly experienced that we definitely had a lot of pressure to deliver results as quickly as possible, which is good. You need healthy tension, but you've also got to balance that with doing it the right way. And there are tips and tricks for how to be like, look at all the progress we're making, while you're actually doing the not sexy stuff in the background that no one cares about, but is totally essential. So I think that actually is the the biggest factor is just technology debt, right? The fact that a lot of these companies have these interlaced legacy systems, that could be running everything from COBOL to Salesforce. And somehow you've got to find a way to start to pull it apart and put it back together again without interrupting business operations. So, that is a very, very challenging situation.
Yeah, it is. It seems super complicated, but it is a really important thing. What are some signs that your company may need digital transformation, like ASAP? And I'm kind of thinking of the old Jeff Foxworthy, you might be a redneck, so you might need digital transformation if...
So that's a good question, but the world is so varied, right? Like again, to use the manufacturing example, like if you're running a manufacturing plant, how do you know if you need, or just a manufacturing company, how do you know if you need digital transformation? And I guess it comes down to competitiveness, right? Like at the end of the day, if I, and I don't mean to give the consultant answer, it depends, but
it's
right?
okay.
It depends. I'll just leave it there. It depends, Max. It depends.
Thank you. It does. I'm jotting down notes like crazy here.
Yeah, and that'll be $800. I think it depends on the competitive environment, honestly, and it's not where everybody is, but where they're going and where you want to be. Because the one thing, and this is the one thing that's actually kind of cool, is when you have this if you have a catastrophic situation where you really need to do something dramatic and you need to do it quickly, it actually is an opportunity to leapfrog. Like where things get kind of bogged down is this kind of sedimentary approach to any kind of digital experience, where it's just like this layer on top of this layer on top of this layer. And the next thing you know, you've got this like monstrous Frankenstein infrastructure that really is not going to allow you to, introduce something dramatically new. Like you're introducing like a very holistic CRM and marketing automation, for example, or, RFID tracking of assets or whatever, depending on your business.
Right. Just all the acronyms.
Correct. I know. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry about that. Custom relationship management. And I actually don't know what RFID stands for. What is RFID?
I actually have no idea. I never really thought about it. I know what it is. It's that tracking thing, I think.
Yeah. It's the thing with the devices that say, we're here, we're here.
It's that thing using technology.
Yeah. But the cool thing about the transformation experience, as opposed to just the innovation experience, is that you often get to wipe the slate clean. And that's your opportunity to go, okay, let's really think about where we want to be, not where we are, not where we were, but where we want to go, and to kind of have that leapfrog opportunity. But that's also when business is typically in crisis, right? When everyone's like, oh man, like things are falling apart. There is opportunity in change, but it's scary.
It is scary. It's always scary, but sometimes it's necessary. What would you say is the biggest step you can take to quote unquote digitally transform or integrate these new technologies more?
It's culture. So culture eats strategy. So if you don't think about the culture around what you're trying to do and get the culture aligned to the goal, it's not going to, you can force things through, don't get me wrong, but you will not be as successful and you will go more slowly. We saw this a lot with Social Media Group. Like I really, when I look back on my career, I have really spent an awful lot of time going into organizations and saying, like, in the nicest way possible, you're doing it wrong. And here's how. And here's how your boss would like you to do it differently, whether I'm the boss or someone else is the boss.
That sounds like a fun job. So it matches up with your earlier statement.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm being obviously kind of, tongue in cheek about it, but essentially, right, whether we're a social media agency coming in to help increase capabilities, or, fixing the digital experience at SAP, or, any number of other things that I've done over the years. And so the one thing about that is that people don't like that, right? They don't like to do things wrong, and they don't like change generally, right? A third of people love change. A third you can get to go with you if you do it right, if you sort of set the culture. And another third are going to be a little tougher. Setting the culture, being really crystal clear about where we're all trying to go, sort of the very standard John P. Cotter, who's kind of the godfather of change management. A lot of the principles, I think he's got 7 principles, all of those, yes, please, rinse and repeat, But a lot of it's around communication and culture setting, right? So making sure people are emotionally connected to what it is you're trying to do, helping them understand their role in it, giving them a piece of it so that they are invested, explaining to the organization why you're doing it, what your progress is in this incremental way, and never sort of taking the temptation of declaring victory, because that's when things just kind of stop and people walk away. So if you don't have the culture on board with your transformation, you will probably fail. And if you succeed, it's just going to be so much harder than if you took the time to over communicate and get people excited, frankly, get them excited about the vision.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds wonderful. Culture is a big Frankenstein monster in itself. Like that's a whole another, insert idiom here.
Mm.
But what can somebody take to actually instill this embracement of digital in their culture? Like, is it just through education? Are there specific things you can do?
Mm. So communicate.
What was that? I'm
Com-
just kidding.
communicate, communicate.
Okay,
And
got it that time.
yeah, just to be clear. And I can't stress that enough. And it's about transparency. It's about helping people understand the progress. It's about helping them understand what you're trying to do. It is an opportunity to reflect on and reiterate the vision of where you're trying to go, the big idea. And something I have certainly noticed in the time that I've been working is that the bigger the vision, the better. It's kind of interesting, actually, that I find that if you wrap things up in a very like, hey, we're going to improve our processes and create a better digital experience for people, that's fine. Like that's good. Nobody doesn't want to do that, but it isn't very inspiring. But if you wrap it up in something much bigger and say, look, the reality is that 2/3 of decisions in very high volume, high budget enterprise sales, 2/3 of the customer decision journey happens before anyone gets on the phone with a sales rep. This is the world. This is the way it's going. We're not being considered, and we don't even know it because they don't call us unless they're 2/3 of the way through. We need to capture that 2/3 and be present. And the only way to do that is to be relevant and to be findable and be the right thing in the right place at the right time. So we have to completely change the way that we go to market and the way that we share content and the way that we put it out on the web and the way that we use our social and digital channels. That is very different from like, we should just fix some infrastructure.
That sounds so much better than using processes and systems and all those words over and
Right?
over again.
Yeah, like the world is changing and we need to be hyper competitive and leapfrog our competitors and understand it more quickly than they do so we can be the right thing in the right place at the right time. But that's also way bigger, right? That's actually ironically this like much larger, much scarier idea than fixing some processes and systems. However, it's a lot more inspiring and it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more emotional. And so that is what humans connect with. And so curiously, when presented with a fairly tactical thing that needs to be done, when you actually wrap it in a much larger idea, that's when people find it easier to get on board and support it. So you cannot forget the emotional aspect of driving change and connecting with culture, because nobody ever changed their lives because of something they saw in a spreadsheet. They were connected with emotionally. But it's a soft thing, kind of like, I guess, but it's complete human nature. And sometimes people forget that.
You can just feel your advising expertise here. So I appreciate you flexing your advising muscles here.
Hey, I love my job. Like I literally love my job. So I'm happy to share.
Well, that actually, you just read my mind. So you do a lot of advising these days. What is it you like about advising and turned you onto it in the first place?
So first of all, I'm always have all the ideas and all the words to say. Like I always like to talk and tell everybody all the stuff. So it's like kind of a natural fit. I'm essentially a born know-it-all, right? So I know, so I'm always happy to share my expertise. But you know what? For me, it's the same thing that I loved about leading a team of 500 at a company like SAP. I had about a dozen direct reports. I really love. Okay, so I have a management theory, which I will get to in a second. But first, I'm just going to say I love helping people be awesome. Right? Like I truly The thing that makes me the happiest in the world is watching someone who didn't think they could do something, do more than they ever thought possible. Like that is just like the moment that just gives me the grins. And, doing that as a boss or an advisor is a lot about support. It's a lot about asking the tough questions. And it's a lot of, and sharing expertise, right? You don't want to be too directive because people generally know what to do, but also sharing your expertise. But so I have this kind of like organizing principle around my life, which I can share with you if you like, but it also,
yes,
I feel like I'm, okay. So I didn't really used to talk about it a lot because I figured if I talk about this, I immediately will never get another job again. So now that I'm kind of in advising, kind of stepping back mode and, a little less dependent on the day-to-day paycheck, I feel more comfortable sharing it. Because it feels like a career limiting move. So at its core,
I'm very excited for this, and apologize in advance if you don't get any job offers after saying this.
It's fine. You know what? At this point in my life, I'm good. So here is the theory that really clicked for me. That helped me understand why being lazy actually might be a secret power, despite what your parents might tell you. So there's this military officer, a German general, and his name is Kurt von Hammerstein Eckord, and you can Google him. And he had this theory that there are 4 basic human characteristics, and each of us have 2 of them. One is to be lazy, one is to be intelligent, one is to be stupid, and one is to be industrious. So the combinations are like this. And his sort of assessment of how people were in the various combinations. So if you are stupid and lazy, that's okay. We can put you to work, give you a lot of direction, really be on your back. You can peel potatoes and actually be quite productive. If you are intelligent and industrious, wonderful. You make a terrific staff officer. You will take a problem, you will figure it out, you will get it done, you will not sleep until things are complete. So those are the people who are really terrific executors, right? They're really executional. They make it happen. They run the team. They put the hours in. And then there are lazy and intelligent people who actually make the very best leaders of all because they don't want to do any more work than they have to, so they delegate. They find very clever shortcuts to efficiency because they don't want to do anything more than they have to do. And they are very happy to, share responsibility with others, which allows them to scale and think about the bigger picture. And then you have the very dangerous, industrious, and stupid who, once you give them something, they won't, even if it's the wrong thing, they'll just keep going and they won't stop. So those people are actually kind of dangerous. So I like to think of myself, and perhaps I'm being a little bit self-flattering, as lazy and intelligent, because I do love to delegate. I love to, sort of figure out the big problem and hand it to people and really support them to solve it. So for me, that's the part of my job that I love so much. And I've really had a great opportunity to do that at a very large scale at SAP. By the time I left, I was running half of the global marketing team. And then as an advisor, over the intervening 4 years or so, to be able to do that with startup CEOs, who are needing to learn how to delegate, needing to learn how to scale as their business grows up, 1,000% a year. And even senior leaders who are trying to make that leap from a manager to a leader and understand how they need to let go in order to be most effective and efficient. So for me, I love my job. Like I love giving things to people and watching projects unfold. And where my secret power is, I think, is helping define the vision and helping communicate the why, and just very patiently explaining things to people and doing the stakeholdering, like, hey, let's all get on board. Let me help you understand what we're trying to do here, kind of stuff. So so that is my management theory. Welcome. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you. Yeah, that will be $800 as well.
Oh, damn.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a cool theory. And it reminds me, it kind of ties to the concept of just keeping it simple and being as simple as possible, but or as effective as optimized as possible, depending on how you look at it. I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan, and I read his book, Tribe of Mentors. And at the start, kind of in the prologue or intro, whatever you want to call it, he basically just spelled out that, look, this book is not complicated. It's literally like the same 13 questions I ask every person, but the background behind it is I always think when I take on a big undertaking, I try to think, what's the way I could make this stupider or make this simple? And so 100%. The way to make it is kind of that same idea of being lazy but intelligent about it. And so I totally am on board with your theory. You've won me over.
Yeah.
And for anybody wondering, because this thought popped in my head when you mentioned that he was a German military general. So Hammerstein was actually a well-known opponent of Hitler and the whole regime and everything there. So that's just something, just to like,
We like him even more.
right? Yeah, just to, if anybody
Yeah.
was wondering. So that's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to like put myself out of work, apparently. Yeah.
Imagine you started your own podcast. You're growing your brand, sharing your expertise, maybe even your terrible puns, and meeting fascinating people. That is awesome. Now, imagine all the hours you've lost every week due to the podcast's demands. Not so awesome. I am your podcast producer. Email me at max@hippodirect.com. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to a segment on inspiration and creativity. What do you do to stay creative?
I'm pretty good to myself in terms of leisure activities.
All right,
You know what?
go on.
I do kind of a wide range of things. I actually really enjoy skeet shooting.
Really? Okay.
So yeah. I love target, always have all manner of target based things, like hit that thing with the other thing. Whether it's, I'm not very good at archery, but it's fun. And it's you and it's self competition, which is also fun. I also really love to travel. So my husband and I, a big part of our lives now is flexible lifestyle. So we sort of do little projects in between. Probably there'll be a bit of a break on that for a while, but that's a huge source of inspiration. So yeah, so we do travel, and I get a huge amount of inspiration from going to places I've never been and looking at things I've never seen and figuring stuff out, and just having completely unique experiences. So that's hugely recharging for me, for us. And then you know what? Like maybe fairly typically, I really enjoy cooking. I'm addicted to the New York Times cooking app, and probably try 3 or 4 new things a week. Yeah, so cooking, I find cooking very creative. So that's maybe not that interesting, but those are the things that I really like to spend my time doing.
It is. Well, I enjoy all those. Well, actually, I've never ski shooted before, but
It's super fun.
I know people who have and seem to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I definitely love to travel and cook. So what is it to kind of insanely difficultly tie those 3 things together? What is it about those activities that helps you recharge or impacts your creativity or mental energy?
Yeah, good question. I think skeet shooting and cooking are about focus, right? And and you're competing with yourself. It's not like who makes the best pie or whatever. It's skeet shooting is something. Yeah, it depends on your situation, but it could be. Yeah, skeet shooting is certainly competitive with the group of people you're shooting with. However, I don't sort of think of it that way. I really focus on how did I do this time versus last time. So I find that both skeet shooting and cooking are about focus, that you really are focused on a single task and block everything out, which is very calming. It's almost meditative, can almost be meditative.
Yeah.
And so it's just a little bit of quiet time in your brain. And then for me, traveling is the opposite. Traveling is input, right? Often overwhelming input of new things that is exciting, right? You're walking down a path, you've never been here before. You're seeing things you've never seen. Like I just can't prize enough a novel experience, whether it's a food that I've never tried before, a place I've never been, a story I didn't know, a vista I've never seen. So for me, it's the input of the totally net new. And I think for cooking in particular too, it's also making something, right? Like I'm making something, and I do enjoy making things. Yeah. Anyway, long answer, but yes, I think those are the truths.
No, that was actually the perfect length answer, and I'll hit the stopwatch now. Yeah, it's so true about trying new things or creating something. On the cooking front, it's something I feel like cooking definitely is something you get better with over time, but it comes down to how adventurous you want to be and how much time you want to put into it. But my girlfriend Dana and I, we've started doing this thing over the past few months where she got an Instant Pot from her mom. And as part of that, it just makes it so much easier and quicker to do like such a more wide range of different kind of elaborate options. So like we we're making a point now to at least once a week cook something that is completely new, and like
Awesome.
we'll go out of our way to find recipes that are just seem challenging but also are of course going to taste very good. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun experience cooking it. It's great. And of course you get rewarded with food. So what's not to like?
And you get to eat it. Exactly. What's not to
Right.
love, right? Your output, you get to eat. And I know,
Exactly.
isn't like, I'm quite critical about my own cooking. Like I'll be like, yeah, this was not good. Like I did not enjoy this dish. But when I do like it, I love sitting at the table going, hey, with my son and my husband. I'll go, hey, this is pretty good. Hey, right? This is a pretty good meal, isn't it? Like we'll make this again. It's such a great feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Or as I like to say, wow, this is really fucking good.
Exactly.
How about on the people side? So you mentioned some big names earlier that have been helpful for you on the social media side, but who'd you say as your, it could be someone who's a family member, it could be someone you never even met before, but who would you say has been your biggest inspiration throughout your career to actually have the confidence to be a key executive at major corporations, or be a consultant, start a consultancy in a world that's not really developed yet?
Mm. 100% my mother. My mother is a totally amazing person. Her name is Stephanie King, and she is a jeweler, actually. She makes beautiful
Really?
jewelry. Yeah, she does. Yeah, and her first career was as a teacher. She was an educator, and then she was an antique dealer for a while, and then but has always loved jewelry. And over the last 10 years or so, has been an artisanal jewelry maker, and is part of an arts community and stuff. So she's incredibly talented, and she is a huge source of inspiration for me on a couple of fronts. The first one is that as a child, she literally would say to me, "You can do whatever you want," like very explicitly.
Yeah.
You can do, and also with an expectation that I could do whatever I wanted to do, and to the point where really as a young woman first starting my career, and at the time it was in television because that's what I went to school for. I was working for a production company. I had an executive turn to me and asked me to. There were two of us. One was a man who was reporting to me, and there was me, and an executive turned to me and asked me to get people coffee. And I can remember feeling like somebody just hit me across the face with a fish. I thought, what is happening right now? Is this sexism? Is sexism happening right now? But that was really like, it was a total shock to me because I had been raised with absolutely no expectation of any kind of gendered interaction like that.
Yeah, of
I was
course.
just a person, right? But I think a lot of women, unfortunately, are in situations where they're kind of they're exposed to it from an early age, because that executive who turned to me probably has daughters, right? And so how did he raise them differently than he raised his sons? And I did not have that experience. I had a very gender neutral childhood, in terms of what I could do and the expectations and girls versus boys and all of that kind of stuff. Like it just wasn't
Yeah.
a thing. So in a way that was almost a protective layer, because every time I run into it, I'm like, really? Like seriously? It's not this kind of, oh, it's just how it is. Like there's always an element of friction for me, which I think has been very protective, right? So that you don't kind of get used to things you shouldn't get used to. You make sure to sort of correct circumstances when you can. I mean, it's not all on me. So that I think was wonderfully protective, if I could use it that way. That I didn't have an
Yeah.
expectation that people would treat me differently because I was a girl. And then the other part of it as well, and so that gave me a lot of confidence. I think that, of course, sure, let's do it. Um, and then the flip side is that my mother is an incredibly ethical person, as my grandmother was as well. And she's been gone now for about 4 or 5 years. Very, very ethical. Always do the right thing, no matter how much it hurts. So you do the right thing, whether it's good for you or not. And my mother has lived her whole life that way, and she certainly instilled those. I like to think, anyway, I try to live those values myself, and that just makes life really simple when you really look at things through what's the lens of what is the right thing to do. Politics in a business environment fall away. It's not that you're not aware of them, but they're not a consideration, and it just makes life really simple, and it helps people understand where you're coming from and how you would likely approach a situation. So my mom, 100%, is responsible. I like to say this: good and bad mom. The good things and the bad things, all your fault. But yeah, my mom is a huge inspiration to me. She's a really amazing person.
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing. And the lessons kind of keep going back to simple, fun, and confidence there. So it's a good
Yeah.
mix of things.
Yeah. Just keep it simple.
Let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where we talk about a recent or somewhat recent brand or campaign that caught our attention. And we were chatting about Spotify earlier because Spotify, is very impressive and rapidly changing company overall. And even, it seems like new acquisitions every day, but there's something they did from an advertising campaign standpoint that caught your attention. You mind talking about that for a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I know you often have people talk about new campaigns. This campaign is not new, nor was it in North America. It was from 2006, and my husband and I were in London at the time, and we're in the tube, and we saw these billboards from Spotify, and I am a Spotify user. I love the service. And they said things like, "Dear person who listened to the Forever Alone playlist for 4 hours on Valentine's Day, are you okay?" And they used a ton of, it was so funny, and they used a ton of user data to come up with these super hilarious taglines. And they kind of got a lot of flack for it because it's like borderline creepy. And looking at the Independent did this kind of op-ed piece, and they were like, it's not right to take people's misfortune and unhappiness and turn it into an ad campaign. But I liked it. I really liked it a lot. I don't think I've ever looked at a billboard and like laughed my head off. And there were a whole bunch of them and a whole bunch of series of them. So I thought that was super, super, super clever and super funny. So that's a big one for me. Yeah. I still remember it.
Is that, you said 2006, you mean 2016 or was it 2006?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say 2006? It was 2016.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's such a strong campaign. I agree. I think yes, there's always, concerns about privacy and what data companies have on you as a consumer, but Spotify, I feel like that's what they're all about. And that's what I like about them the most. The fact that they know what you're listening to and make custom playlists for you every single day and know what to recommend to you. They make it such a more pleasant listening to experience, whether that's music or now podcasts as well. And so that's what they thrive on. So they kind of hinted at that through this campaign saying, hey, we know you, we know what you listen to. And it was obviously a little bit darker comedy or a little bit tongue in cheek there, but it was clever. What was your favorite part about it?
I think it was just absolutely hilarious, right? Like there were playlists. Another playlist was, or another ad rather was, dear person who played bloody motherfucking asshole 20 times. Have you calmed down yet? It was just the time, and it was very British humor, right? It was very, very British humors, and I don't think you'd necessarily see that so much in North America. But I just absolutely thought it was hilarious that they've taken the data they have, and you're right, it's sort of re-emphasizing that personalization that they do. So very on brand, very it was this perfect mix of being on brand as well as kind of reinforcing this benefit that they have. So I just thought it just hit so many buttons in that way. It was incredibly clever. And I'm the same. I'm a massive Spotify user. I love the weekly playlist.
Yeah.
I have discovered so many bands from the weekly playlist and gone to see them in performance. Which Spotify is also really good at, by the way, because then they'll send you, if there's a bunch of stuff you listen to, they'll send you notifications that there's a tour date. And I've gone from almost seeing no music, as a sort of a more older adult to, buying concert tickets 6-7 times a year because something like Maluatsu Atsake, is this Ethiopian father of jazz, which is super obscure, came to Toronto. And so we went to see him because we've been listening to his music because of Spotify. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, anyway, I really just like the whole experience they deliver. And I think their marketing and I think their brand promise and their marketing is super well integrated. They practice what they preach. And I think it's very solid.
Yeah, they totally changed the game. And this instance, it came through in their advertising as well. So let's get to a segment called The Unusual. So pet peeves, quirks, and weird talents. And hopefully that was a good sign, not a, oh shit. What is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve, I should have thought about this ahead of time. I'm feeling very positive right now.
Maybe it's being prompted to answer things out the right away.
All right. My biggest pet peeve, I don't do wedding showers or baby showers because they're horrible.
No showers.
I shower personally, regularly-ish, but I do not attend baby showers or wedding showers because I don't know who invented them, but I think it was the man to oppress women because they're so boring. And there's wine, but it's never enough. Like there's not enough wine in the world to make looking at the vacuum cleaner you just got from your aunt interesting. So I will send a gift. I love you, but I'm not going. And I have steadfastly refused to do so, even to the point of like my sister and sister-in-law. I was like, nope, not going. So yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, so you kind of have a reputation. You're like the badass or outlaw of the shower world.
Possibly. I don't think you want me there. I'm just going to be miserable and super rude. So you probably don't even want me to go.
I'm just imagining you kind of like standing near the door and being like, oh, that's a terrible gift. Or like, what? Why are we here?
Exactly. Give me some more wine and I'm going to start a fight.
That's incredible. I could definitely get behind more wine. How about quirks? So outside of the shower world, what is something that is quirky about your personality that maybe your husband or somebody calls you out for, but it's part of who you are? Like you won't change that.
I'm really good at fridge management. I don't know if that's a negative, but it is a little obsessive sometimes. Where and I think it's my immigrant background. So my mom's family came from Europe during the war. Food was tight for a certain period of time. So they were always very respectful of food. Like this idea of throwing food away that you could eat is like not on. And which I think is good. Like I think you should respect food, right? You should respect the all the bounty that we have. And so I'm like a little it's not an economic thing. It's literally an emotional thing. I don't like to throw away things that are perfectly good. So I'm very good at making sure we use up every last bit of everything and freezing. And as my husband actually literally, so I got married early last year, just about a year ago.
Congrats.
Literally in our vows, thank you. Literally in our vows, referred to my fridge management skills. So I think that's a known quirk.
That's awesome. Well, you're the fridge you're the fridge management expert. You're the wedding shower rebel.
Yeah.
How about in the weird talent side? So what's something in addition, I mean, those are good examples for this as well, but what's something else that you are really talented at, but literally has like no impact on your business? Like it could be a random like human trick or memory trick, or, you know, it could be hanging up pictures perfectly straight, you know?
I do like to do that, but I don't think that's that exciting. So I have the ability to suck my nostrils in and flatten them without touching them.
I knew you were going to say that.
How did you know that?
No, I definitely did not. I have no concept. That's incredible.
Yeah. Somewhere, and I haven't looked in many, many years, but somewhere there actually is a video of me doing that a gentleman by the name of Shell Israel, who was also an early social media pioneer, put up on YouTube because we were at a conference together and I just decided it was time to share it with the world.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Understandable.
So yeah, obviously, as one does. And so yeah, so I can suck my nostrils in.
Okay, so let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get wild. If you could only listen to one band for the rest of your life, who would that be?
Right now, I am very into Kronbin. So I could probably listen to Kronbin for the rest of my life. They need to make some more albums, though.
What is the hardest you've ever laughed?
The hardest I've ever laughed.
Other than the Spotify billboard.
It's a long story. How long do we have? This is rapid fire, right?
Yeah, but the answers are less rapid fire. I don't even ask them that rapid to begin with. So as much time as you want.
Okay, so my son, who was young at the time, was refusing to do something I'd asked him to do, and he was kind of rude about it. And so I said to him, "You need to apologize, or I'm not going to take you to this activity." And he refused to apologize. And finally, my ex-husband at the time, and I said, "Look, you need to apologize for this rude behavior." So I think he was all of 7. And he turned to us and he said, with quotey fingers, he said, "Okay, fine, I'm sorry." And And then he got to go to his activity because it was really funny.
There you go. So humor is the answer to any conflict.
Pretty much, really, yeah. If you get a good laugh out of it, well, you get off. Yeah.
You mentioned you used to work in the TV production space. If all the shows on TV or Netflix were deleted, except one of them, but you got to choose what that was, what would that be?
I'm really into Narcos right now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm finding it very, yeah. I'm finding that very entertaining. Narcos is good.
Without giving anything away, is this the most recent, like Mexico season 2, or are you on a different part?
Well, that's what we're on to now, but we did see the other parts.
Okay. Cool.
Pablo Escobar.
All right. Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, and I've talked about it with a lot of friends and family as well. I haven't watched Mexico season 2 yet, but I'm planning to start that soon. So maybe by the time you listen to this, I have. That show, they do such a good job with it. And I really find I don't mind the subtitles, which is like kind of a hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Also, the scenery is so beautiful. Like it's almost like you're going on vacation every time you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, and I think they should win an Emmy for best use of sunglasses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Always sunny in Narcos Delphia. So thank you so much, Maggie. This has been a blast. I know that was some insanely fast rapid fire, but thank you so much for sharing your story and your tips on advising digital transformation. Where is the best place for people to connect with you?
You know what, Max? I'm on LinkedIn, as one is, as well as Twitter. And my Twitter handle is just my name, Maggie Fox. So both places. And in both, well, not so much LinkedIn, but on Twitter, sometimes there are swears.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I know that's a very offensive word in hell, but and then last thing here, final thoughts. The stage is yours. It could be a quote. It could be a line. It could be a Narcos sunglasses recommendation, whatever you want here. Send us off.
I think the power of assuming the best intentions is one of those secret powers that people really underestimate. And if you ever want to get things done personally or professionally, keeping that in mind all the time is actually a really key success factor.
We'll keep that in mind to keep that in mind. Thank you, Maggie, for sharing all your stories and tips. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also check us out on Good Pods, where you can find all the podcasts your friends and family are listening to. To dive into our marketing and business growth resources, check out hippodirect.com/blog and hippodirect.com/newsletter. That newsletter is the Hippo Digest, and it's your place for wild marketing ideas every single week. And of course, but certainly not least, come say hey and connect on your favorite social media platforms at the handles Hippo Direct and Max Branstetter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!